Good morning and welcome to this pre-recorded service for tomorrow, November the 5th. We'll be worshiping at Central and Stanhope. Glad you can join us. Just a few announcements before we begin. Our official board meeting will be meeting this coming Tuesday, November the 7th at Central United at 7 p.m. Our next men's luncheon is going to be this Tuesday, the 7th, at noon at Papa Joe's, which is on University Avenue in Charlottetown. Our session meeting is Wednesday, November the 8th at 7 p.m. And our book club will be meeting at 7 p.m. in York Church on Tuesday, November the 25th. I'm going to be on study leave and vacation leave from the 13th of November to December the 1st. And Reverend Doreen Daly will be covering for any pastoral emergencies. Her telephone number is 902-940-1863. Also, anyone who is ordering calendars, if you can get those orders to us ASAP, because Margaret will be initiating the order quite soon. Anyway, glad you can join us, and we gather and we open up with our call of worship momentarily. This is a special service today to anticipate Remembrance Day, which will be, of course, on the 11th, and so some of the prayers reflect that in this service. Our call to worship. In silent fields, poppies blow. In empty streets, silence dwells. In vacant rooms, photos sit. War does not end with a pen or a parade. Into the silence, the emptiness, the sorrow. Let us bring the peace, the song, the hope of holy love. Let us worship. We have lit the Christ candle. Lord, have mercy. Christ, have mercy. May our silent prayer and our overflowing hearts be a healing balm in a hurting world for friend and enemy by your grace. May we be united in the love you show us in Jesus, in prayer deeper than words. May our hearts meet and sing in blessing. Amen. The reading this morning is not actually in the Bible. It's from a text called Pirkei Avot. It's known as the Ethics of the Fathers, and is a Jewish text. And I'll explain a little bit about it in the sermon. But I'm using this as a basis for my meditation today. Pirkei Avot 6:1. Joshua ben Parahia and Nittai the Arbelite received the oral tradition from them. Joshua ben Parahia used to say, "Appoint for thyself a teacher, and acquire for thyself a companion and judge over all men with a scale weighted in his favor." Thanks be to God for the reading of this text. Amen. The title of this meditation is A Nest of Remembrance. One of the most meaningful experiences I've had was when Margaret and I and Deborah and her friend Ashley toured the battlefields near Ypres in Belgium. Maybe some of you have done the same thing or a similar thing. The number of military graves in that area that we visited was just staggering. There were so many of them. And in many places, particularly at Passchendaele, the soldiers were buried mostly where they fell in the battlefield, still in their platoon formations, lying beside one another. We visited the hospital bunker where John McCrae served as a physician. He was, of course, a Canadian soldier who wrote that well-known poem In Flanders Fields, the last line of which reads, "To you, from failing hands we throw the torch, be yours to hold it high." I think that's what Remembrance Day is essentially about, to hold high the torch. And while not glorifying war in any way or shape or form, to shine that torch on the memory and the stories of those who served. I included that additional reading today from a text called Pirkei Avot, also known as the Ethics of the Fathers. Rabbi Ellis and I spend normally about 15-20 minutes each Wednesday before our Zoom Bible study group begins. We read one verse from Pirkei Avot and we explore some meanings of the Hebrew words. This week, we read a particular verse that I had chosen from Pirkei Avot 6.1. Yehoshua ben Pariah used to say, "Appoint for thyself a teacher and acquire for thyself a companion, and judge all men with the scale weighted in their favor." Now you might wonder what this has to do with Remembrance Day, but I think it can serve to remind us to honor and to remember the sacrifices of those who came before us, to learn from their experiences, and to approach their stories and the lessons they offer with an open and a compassionate heart. Yehoshua ben Pariah said, "Acquire a companion." Now the word companion in Hebrew is uchne, and it also means nest. And that really is what a remembrance service is. It's a nest that we build to hold and to treasure the memory of those who served and those who died. And in this meditation, I've tried to create a small nest, kind of with 2 eggs in it, to contain stories of remembrance that might encourage us to hold that torch high, as John McRae says in his poem. Rabbi Yehoshua ben Pariah said, "Get for thyself a teacher." When I was a student minister in training at Cole Harbour United, one of the skills I had to develop was in doing pastoral visits. And I always appreciated the opportunity, particularly to meet with the more elderly members of our pastoral charge and to hear the stories of their lives and the lessons that they learned. This week, I was thinking about one of those people I met at Cole Harbour, and I couldn't remember his name at first. It's been probably about 7 years. But I was able to find his name in my notes that I took from that time, which I'd kept. His name was Haviland Chasen. Haviland died in 2019 at the age of 98. He lived to a good old age. I found his obituary online. Haviland served with the North Shore New Brunswick Regiment during World War II. I also discovered that he was interviewed shortly before his death by the CBC concerning his wartime experiences, and this was associated with the 75th anniversary of D-Day. And luckily, I found the video of that interview just on Saturday. It took place on a train, in fact, where Hav boarded the train. I think it was in Sackville, New Brunswick, and it was the same train line that he traveled with the North Shore New Brunswick Regiment to Halifax before they departed to England by sea at the beginning of the war. I'll always remember that visit that I had with Hav. He told me about his experiences during the war, and particularly his memories of the D-Day landing on Juno Beach. 100 members of his battalion lost their lives on that day, and Hav shared with me what it was like running up onto Juno Beach into the German machine guns and seeing so many of his good friends falling on either side of him. I'll always remember that meeting with Hav that day and hearing his story and having the privilege of learning from his experiences. Hav, in his CBC interview, said that he felt it was important for him to tell his story. And he described what it was like going to the memorial services at the war cemeteries in France and reading the names on the gravestones of his friends. A lot of his friends died there. And he would ask himself, was it really necessary for so many to die? He asked, why couldn't people talk some sense into one another? He said, despite the fact that we apparently know so much more today, the very same thing is happening again in various countries around the world. And we've seen this recently, haven't we? I would like to add Evelyn Chasen's name to that list that we read or will read in church this morning. Yehoshua ben Parahai used to say, acquire a companion and judge all men with the scale weighted in their favor. This story is one that Margaret told me about her father, Daniel John Flynn, who joined the Royal Air Force as a boy apprentice when he was 15 years old, I believe, during the Second World War. He served in several places in the theaters of war, particularly in Burma. And after World War II, he was stationed in Germany with the forces. And he told his family of an experience he had when he was visiting a church there. There were memorials to the many German soldiers who had lost their lives in World War II. Margaret's dad had been to Mass there several times, and one of the name plaques had caught his attention. It was for a German soldier, in fact, an airman like himself. He also noticed that the person was the same age as he was, and he felt this connection with this young man. You could say a sense of companionship. One of them had survived the war, he had, but the other had not. So on one of the occasions when Daniel attended Mass again, he lit a candle and he placed it beside that name on the memorial. Well, there was a German family standing not too far off, and one of them, an older man, noticed what Daniel had done. He asked him, why are you, a British airman, lighting a candle for this German soldier? Daniel explained that they were the same age, and though they'd fought on opposite sides, they had each served their country, and that no doubt as young men, each of them had been drawn into something that they didn't fully comprehend or understand, and the implications and the impact that that would have on their lives, and how the very nature of war required them to do terrible things to other people. The man from this German family started to cry when he heard that, and he said to Margaret's dad, that young man was my son. As Yeshua ben Parahaya said, judge all men with the scale weighted in their favor. I therefore add the name Daniel John Flynn to the names of those we read earlier in church, and on his behalf, the name, the unknown name, of that young man that he lit a candle for on that day. In Flanders fields, the poppies blow. Between the crosses, row and row, that mark our place, and in the sky the larks still bravely singing fly. Scarce heard amid the guns below, we are the dead. Short days ago we lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow, loved and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders fields. Take up our quarrel with the foe. To you from failing hands we throw the torch, be yours to hold it high. If ye break faith with those who die, we shall not sleep, though poppies grow in Flanders fields. Amen. And so from this holy place go out, remembering the cost of war, and that in the peace time that follows, wounds are not always noticed. Go in peace to hammer swords into plowshares and spears into pruning hooks. So today we remember, and in our remembering we think of those who sacrificed their lives, willingly and unwillingly. We remember those who came home, but had sacrificed their innocence and mental health. On Remembrance Day, as we gather around our televisions or our cenotaphs to pause and give thanks, let us remember. Amen.